a plug?
Sure, I can do that. Thanks, Mark, for the prompt. Well, let me first welcome everybody on behalf of the Arizona Organization Development Network. My name is Sean Morris, and I'm currently serving as the chair. And this is our first event for the year 2023, and we're super pleased to have Mark LaScola and David Casey from On the Mark Consulting. And Mark, if I recall correctly, it was about 7 months ago, or maybe longer, that you and I crossed paths and talked about this event. And then we had this conversation about what would be a great topic. And we landed on this, and I think this is perfect. I think the timing's perfect. So I'm really looking forward to it. So I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say. So welcome,
Right.
Mark and David.
Thanks, Sean.
Well, Dave, I guess we have to talk about something now, actually, with everyone. But how about this before we do? Since there's a handful of people on the call, how about we start with Randy? Randy, tell us who you are. Give us a 30 seconds of who you are and where are you in the world?
Hey, good day, everybody. Randy Evans. I am here in the Phoenix area. I'm in Scottsdale. Longtime business and tax law attorney turned organizational development consultant.
Wow.
And, it's kind of been an interesting journey.
That's an interesting journey, no doubt.
Yeah. And so this is my first event with the Arizona Organizational OD Network. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys share and getting involved with this group going forward.
Welcome,
Randy.
Randy.
When I'm not traveling on business with Dave, I'm located in downtown Phoenix, where I live right above the, almost above the Phoenix Suns arena and the Diamondback Stadium. So if I can be a local network, part of your network, I'm happy to do that. So
Be great. Look forward to it.
Pick one of your colleagues, would you mind?
Say that again.
Pick one of your colleagues.
Oh, let's see. We'll jump over to Betty.
Hi, my name is Betty Chan. I'm based in Tempe, Arizona. Let's see, my full-time job is an HR business partner at a healthcare system here locally in Arizona. What else? I work with Sean at AZODN. We just had our meeting last night.
That's fantastic. Are you on the board, Betty?
Not exactly. What
Not
am I?
yet, Mark, we're working on her.
They're pulling you in slowly. It's great to see you, Betty.
Great to see everyone. Nice to meet everyone.
Pick one of your colleagues, please.
I will go ahead and pick Vera.
Well, we have two Veras, so which one?
I only see one on my screen, so.
All right.
That must be Kralova.
Okay, thank you, Betty. I'm Vera Kralova. I'm from Czech Republic. And...
Thank you.
Hi, Vera, too.
I was eating.
Okay, so continue, enjoy. I am currently assistant professor, and I used to be and still am in the field of business analysis for the information system technology development for main like banking system and telecommunication system in Czech Republic. So this topic is very interesting for me because currently it's a lot of organization design changes in banking industry and telco industry in our country. Thank you. So Vera, come on, continue.
Sorry, Vera, we're interrupting your dinner there.
Okay, no, sorry. Nice to meet you. I'm Vera. I'm from Italy. I'm working on design since different years. And I met someone from On the Mark in Bilbao last month, Chris Fanner.
Yes,
and
Chris.
So I had this, I subscribed for your email and now I'm here. But I was late at work and I'm dining as I am listening. Sorry for that.
Buon appetito, Vera. Just enjoy yourself, and Yes, we like Chris. He's one of our colleagues, and it's a delight to meet you.
Me too. Me too.
So save Vera time. Lisa, how about you go next? Lisa Barnard.
Okay. Maybe I don't know who's missing. Patrick.
Okay, Patrick, you go.
Sure. My name is Patrick Frazier. I work out of Tempe, Arizona. I'm currently off-site due to not having enough space in our facility right now because we have people from all over the world from our country or from our company. And they asked, they said, Patrick, can we use your office space today? Because we have 40 extra people coming in from all over the world for our sales team. So they asked the OD/HR guy to step out for a little bit. So that it worked out well. My background is human resources that I've been in for 15 years. I've kind of done it all from a human resources perspective. And this is our company's first, dipping the toe in the water with OD. I have a master's degree in organizational development. It's kind of where I wanted my career to go. So I'm officially in the role, but I've also been officially in the role for the past 6-7 months. As we've tried to backfill my replacement as the HR manager at our local, we're a steel foundry in Tempe, Arizona, believe that or not, there actually is a steel foundry here. So that's kind of where we're at right now as people are starting to realize. It's a little bit different when it comes to HR and OD in heavy industry. It's not typically where you see a lot of OD, and then not where you see a lot of where you see not every HR professional is necessarily, I would say, I get a lot of, you went to school so you don't have to do that, right, Patrick? There's a lot of that mentality. So it's a unique business, and I love it. And I'm hoping to, again, this is my first event, and I'm hoping to get more involved with this group because although I have a degree in OD, I don't have a lot of practical application. So I'm hoping that this group and this meeting can assist.
Well, Patrick, I can't say enough about the Arizona ODN, and I'll share with you a little bit why, but stay connected to Sean and Betty, and it's great to have you.
Yes,
Patrick, can you pick one of your colleagues? You got a couple?
I believe Jonathan, we'll go with you.
We'll get you next, Lisa. Jonathan, can you hear us?
He just joined. Maybe he's not fully with us yet.
Never mind, Lisa, you're up.
Okay, okay. Well, I'm Lisa Barnhart. I have working at Sun State Equipment. You'll see the little logo behind me. I've been here almost a year now, and I'm the Director of Organizational and Leadership Development. My background is all HR and training and development with some OD splashed, among it, some, change management, org design and things like that. And so I'm excited because I think my company is kind of about to go through a digital transformation. So I wanted to join and see what I could learn on this one.
Great. Jonathan, can you hear us?
I can.
Jonathan, just who are you? 30 seconds, and where are you in the world?
Okay, I'm Jonathan Weller. I'm a clinical psychologist who's been transitioning into doing organizational development work, consulting and coaching. And I'm here in Gilbert, Arizona.
Fantastic.
He is on
Originally
the
from
board,
the
Mark.
area, do you prefer Jonathan or
Yeah,
John?
I prefer Jonathan. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm originally from the Seattle, Washington area.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, welcome. Dave, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I will do, Mark. I'll carry on with the international flavor. So I'm Dave Casey. I work with Mark, and I joined on the Mark last August. And I've got an atypical background for consultancy. I spent nearly 30 years in the British Army. I left in 2015. I then joined Deloitte in the UK for 3 years. I then ran a sports technology company doing sports technology in football or soccer across Europe. And then I joined a digital transformation company, or a data analytics company in the UK in Bristol. And that experience was really quite formative because I realized that a lot of people we were supporting, and mainly in the UK military, they were buying technology to solve point problems, and they were applying data analytics techniques and some data analytics platforms to solve point problems, but they weren't really optimizing the whole. What they were getting was a small amount of benefit in one area, but it didn't work across everything. And then also, we were acquired, we were being integrated into big corporate. It didn't work quite so well. And I've met Mark incidentally through some work we were looking at. And I genuinely think now that I've kissed a lot of frogs, but I found my princess and On the Mark, because my personal values align very closely with Mark's and On the Mark's of honesty, integrity, and courage. And say that for a whole variety of reasons. Our solution has a huge amount of integrity in it. And I won't steal Mark's thunder and go through that, but 33 years in development, it is complete. And we deal with our clients very, very honestly. We don't work with everybody because sometimes they're not the right people for us to work with. And we have the courage to have those conversations. I'm absolutely privileged now to work with Mark and work to support a lot of the people that we work with, all of whom get real change that sticks from the model modernizations that we perform. You can tell, I'm not from the States. I live in Winchester, which is about an hour south of London on the train. Very happily married, have been for 30 years. It's our 30th anniversary in December. 2 grown-up children, both off the payroll. And I think the moment I knew that was when I stopped paying their cell phone bills. That when they turned around and said, "Dad, no, that's me. I want to pay those." We thought, that's it. We've succeeded. And the big news is we should be a granddad, or I'm going to be a granddad in about 2 months' time. So that's absolutely what's focusing our family mind at the moment. Is everything is geared around the arrival of the baby. We don't know what it is yet, boy or girl, they haven't found out. So 5th of March is the due date. So that's when we're expecting the big news. But hey, that's me. That's me.
Yeah, that's pretty good, Dave. Hi, everyone. Some of you know me, Mark LaScola. I founded and started On the Mark 33 years ago. I started doing organization design work in the mid 80s. I had my first redesign experience in 1987. While I was stalking another consulting firm to watch what they do. And I was just I was curious. It's a bottle of wine or over a dinner, kind of my journey, kind of like yours, Randy, from, I'm sure that all our journeys are pretty colorful. Since then, it's hard to believe, but it's been 33 years. And I, like Dave, have 2 incredibly beautiful, capable, successful daughters out in the world. One is a consultant, probably no surprise. Apple does not fall far from the tree. And the other is an entrepreneur who owns her own sustainable grocery store. And if you're into sustainable food supply, you can check her out, her store at the Calicoon Pantry on Instagram or Facebook, or even Google it. So both my daughters are out in New York and San Francisco, and I'm kind of like, well, this is the rest of my life now, kind of thing. And I guess that goes along with the work we're doing. On the Mark now has grown to close to 20 people, and we're continuing to grow. You'll hear more about that later. But as you can see by the color of my beard, I've been around the block a little bit. And I've probably been involved in close to 500 redesigns over my 33 years. And this is all we do is operating model modernization. But we do it in the spirit and in the values that organization development come from, which is transparency, information flow, freedom of choice, respect, inclusion. We do it with those values in mind. So today we wanted to talk, one last thing. I want to share a little bit with you guys that I used to be the chair. I'm just going to share this with you. We give back a lot. We teach. All of our team members are members of industry professional groups in organization development. For example, in 1997, I was the chair of the Arizona ODN for 2 years. So I know what it's like to be sitting in that room with Sean, albeit a virtual room. And I know what it's like, Betty, to be recruiting seeing potential talent and board members who are genius and would add a lot of value. And I'm sure that's part of who you are, Betty. Anyway, so we continue to do that. I serve on global boards now. All of our members serve on Organization Design Forum, European Organization Design Forum. There's a Socio-Technical Systems Roundtable. I'm on the Organization Development Design Community, which actually sets up the CODP certification, which is Organization Design Professional Certification. So we do a lot to give back to our industry groups, and this is just another way that we do that. Without boring you guys anymore, here's how Sean has been, and we've been kind of talking about this webinar. And if you just take 30 seconds and read this slide, I want to start with a question to you guys. So really the first big question here is, our position is that digital transformation, while there's a driver called digitalization, and there's lots of drivers, by itself does not transform anything. And that it's really just a good tagline for technology firms to create demand. I know that sounds a bit harsh. Maybe I'm being a bit Dutch for those of you who appreciate the Dutch. But what are your thoughts on where our position and or your own position? What are your reflections before we get going? Someone have a viewpoint they want to share?
Well, I can kind of say from, again, coming from heavy industry, technology is, well, it's a lot of manual labor. And so just to hear digital, I mean, I know that's kind of what perked me up a little bit, because we don't have a lot of digital. A lot of it's still I would assume with a lot of the colleagues that are here on this call, I mean, me being on a Zoom call at times can kind of confound some people within my organization, because they've been in the manufacturing industry for 40 years, and then it's like, well, no, you just go out there and sweat it out and go get the job done. So
Patrick, in a foundry, what are some of the new techniques, procedures, what we might consider broadly technology, in terms of how things get done, how you make steel, that stand out for you, that are recent?
Well, I'd say it's digital. I mean, I guess it's technically automation, but from the actual, I'll say the actual creation of the steel. I mean, a lot of that is we are starting to bring in automation at our sister foundry up north in Duluth, Minnesota. So believe it or not, we've got both literal polar opposites when it comes to weather. You like the cold, you got Duluth. You like the heat, you got Tempe. But ultimately, a lot of we're utilizing SAP and other ERP systems as well to track a lot of data that we used to not. I mean, when I started with the organization approximately 5.5 years ago, I mean, a lot of that stuff was literally still done by pen and paper. And so, right. So again, for us, and I know that I say this because I've worked in organizations that had all the technology in the world, and I've worked at it where it was like, yeah, we're still in the 1970s. I would say our organization from a digital standpoint is probably in the late 90s, if I'm being generous. But with our ownership being based out of South America, with a huge emphasis of, we got to get caught back up, because, I mean, already it's tough to find people. So let's make sure we find, we have the technology to fit the skill set that's currently out there with the work.
When we talk a little later, we're going to talk about how to make this happen, Patrick. I'll give you some steps that from an organization development perspective that I think will work really well for you as you guys keep loading in more technology, and Perfect. Whether it's automation or digitalization, some things that you can do. And I'll show you a case example that we have in here.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, somebody else, any reflections on the question? What are your thoughts about digital transformation, or in any way, or technology transformation?
Well, I would say I definitely agree with your statement on this slide, because anytime an organization that I've been part of has introduced new technology, be it big or small, you know, there's always an impact to the work that people are doing, right? And I've seen way too many examples or coming after the fact when technology was deployed without thinking about the right, not just the change management, but even just the processes, right? So many companies, for example, make the mistake of trying to fit the technology to their existing processes instead of saying, well, wait a minute, how is the technology designed and do we need to rethink our process? I mean, our process is in place because we don't have the right technology. So why would we force it to fit, you know, our just what we've known, you know, for the last 20 years. So it really is, to your point, it's a systemic, you know, problem you're solving, right? Everyone has to be part of the solution. It can't just be a plug and play, and it can't just be customizing something to fit the old way.
Right, right. Excellent. Lisa, Randy, you were going to go.
Yeah, you know, actually, my comments were very similar to what Lisa just said. One of the benefits, I think, of coming into this space from another discipline is just the ability to kind of step back and look at the big picture and ask questions, sometimes from my standpoint in kind of an innocent way, but so much, I think there's so much made about change for the sake of change. And I think a lot of times people just substitute that word transformation, you know, for the word change. But, you know, one of the things I always with organizations or teams, you know, is to step back and say, well, what is it that you want to accomplish, right? Where are you headed? What is it that you really want to get done? And then work backwards into, you know, the systems, the processes, and then the technology that helps you get there. So that's kind of a backwards way of agreeing with your statement, because so oftentimes I think, especially in this field of tech, it's like just change for the sake of change without really looking at what's the bigger context and how is this going to drive and help us get to where we really want to be, which in my mind is really the true meaning of transformation. It's transform from here to here.
Right.
So I like the comment. Look forward to this discussion today. It'll be interesting.
Well, another kind of statement that I'll make is that the last thing you want to have happen is a technology professional redesigning your operating model.
Yes.
And I cannot say enough about that. And I'll share with you more about what I mean. But what we talk about with companies is an operating model. Most people don't really fully understand or appreciate an operating model. And then you better be careful who's doing that and what they're doing, and for a variety of reasons. And a technology professional, while perfectly capable and able to do technology work, I'm not sure is the right person to be redesigning an operating model. So let's keep going, and I'm hoping this is going to be a discussion for everyone. So we'll stop and breathe, and we'll go wherever you want to go so that we can have a little bit of fun with it. I think if we use Lisa as an example, who now has her camera off, Lisa had glasses on. Well, we use Dave and Sean, and you know, having a good set of glasses allows you to see things more clearly. So we use this lens of a work off of Jay Galbraith's original star model on the right-hand side. And if you keep your eyes on the right, not so much the left, we use this as a lens to understand operating models and technology transformations. And I'm going to go into detail for this if that's of interest to you guys. But there's some rules around the star model that are kind of non-negotiable. And let me go over those with you. The first thing is that business direction, or the red area, drives everything. We typically call this form follows function, where the function of a business, the purpose of a business, drives its form. And its form is how you bound work, organize a structure, set up a management operating system, put in all of your HR reinforcers, build a culture, ways of working. Each of these parts of the OTM applied STAR model have much more detail to it. But this is our lens or our set of glasses or our microscope or our telescope in which we look at an organization. The second rule is always start with the work. I cannot emphasize this enough. Even though we're organization development professionals and people are important to us, early on, if you focus on people, you're focused on the wrong things. And particularly when it comes to technology transformation, the first thing you have to think about is what's the impact of that technology on the value creating work. There is a, I'll probably have all heard of lean principles, lean work, Six Sigma. Lean talks about work in three categories: value creating work, necessary waste, and waste. When we talk about value creating work, we're talking about only the work that occurs to create value for your customers. Everything else is necessary waste. And I'll come back to that. So when we talk about the rule number 2, which is follow the work and get clear about what is the work that you're trying that creates value. It's exactly, I think, Lisa, what you said, which is don't take that technology and just try to map out an existing value creating process. And also don't make one up because there's an opportunity to clean it up, lean it out, fix it, improve it. But nonetheless, the second rule being follow the work. Rule number 3 is structure is not org charts. Structure is about bounding work and how you organize work and ultimately roles, jobs, and people. But it's not hierarchy. It's not about who's my boss, my spans of control, how much power. Well, it does have to do with power, but it doesn't have to do with people. So structure, the DNA for structure is bounding work. How do you take the value creating work and how do you put boundaries around that to ultimately be the DNA for teams, units, departments? The next rule of the STAR is management is necessary waste. And management, I'm not necessarily referring to managers. We have a very famous company in Flagstaff that has no management roles or jobs, yet they still manage work. All work needs to be managed and governed. It's just built in, but it's considered necessary waste, which means that if you approach an operating model modernization and starting with managers, then you're making a huge mistake, which is most large firms, when they go in to do an operating model modernization, they start with, well, this is my team. Let's look at the managers. They don't look at the work. They don't look at bounding the work. They look right at management. That pink area, that management operating system includes technology, governance, decision-making, compliance, regulatory, all the things that you would imagine to manage work, including metrics. So, but it's number 4 on the STAR model. It's not number 1. So the numbering system really tells you where to start first, second, third. Lastly, just a couple of points. Number 5 and 6 are enablers. They're reinforcers to lock in your HR processes, to reinforce the decisions made around your business direction, value creating work, structure, management operating system. Now, how do we reward that? How do we lock into that? how do we set up people processes along the entire employee life cycle to match what we need in the business. And the last item here is number 7, which maybe you'll find a bit controversial. For us is there's no such thing as a program to redo the culture. You either design and set up for the culture you want, or you get what you get. So for us, organizational renewal includes ways of working, behaviors. So Jonathan, if you're doing coaching, one of the lenses you have to help people understand is what's the water they swim in, what's reinforced, what are the norms that are expected but unwritten in the organization. All of these things come into play and are a lagging artifact of the operating model, not just leadership. So we use the STAR model as a lens. This is way more detailed information about the STAR model. And so it's seems to be a good place here. Let me ask this question, and Dave, let me give you some space to talk, because I know it's late and I think my coffee that I started at 5 this morning is just kicking in. My question to the group is, when you put in technology, think of a technology project or anything like an SAP, Patrick, in your instance, or Vera, even a learning management system at the university. When you think of any kind of a technology transformation or technology tool or digitalization, which parts of the STAR get impacted from your perspective? Some, all, if you think of an example. And Sean, I'm assuming you can participate as well.
Yeah, I can speak real quick. I mean, and that just bringing up the learning management system is a great. I mean, it's specific to something that I'm currently working on within our own organization. We currently have one, but we had to evolve past it to include more processes. Basically, also not just here's deploy training, but let's sync it with what we call our quality management system for ISO.
Right.
So it's all coming together. And so really, as you say this, I mean, in a very, very grassroots effort, now that I see this kind of in your STAR model, I mean, looking at it is, you know, we knew the business direction of what it's, why we needed to do it, what the, you know, the limitations of our current systems were, and to merge them into one. And we had to follow where the work was, because we knew, I mean, much like everybody else, I mean, I'm sure everybody's heard the wonderful phrase, the Great Resignation. So there's been a lot of turnover within our organization, which is true to everybody. You know, really, I know it sounds odd, me being the person that everybody says I'm the people guy at the company, which I like to think that I am, but didn't think about the people, because those are interchangeable parts. I mean, somebody gets promoted, somebody leaves, you name it. But it was, okay, what's the task at hand? What are we trying to accomplish? And we followed that. And like you said, I mean, it's even funny when you say some of those items have to be managed and governed. I mean, there are certain things for OSHA that are on there that, you know, we might not have an owner or a manager that manages all of that specifically, but the system we knew needed to be able to deploy what we knew or compliance processes as well, right, in addition to additional training. So that's kind of what we've been looking at. Now, the reward recognition, I mean, again, what we've looked at it from that standpoint is the reward is you guys don't have to do the busy work. As managers, supervisors, all the administrative busy work, there's your reward. You say you don't have time to train. Now you have a system that allows you to do that based on what you have. So we kind of followed that whole process without even really realizing it. You know, I mean, it really makes a lot of sense when going through this.
Yeah, well, it's a really good example of, you know, a learning management system doesn't have, in the scheme of technology, is not nowhere near as complicated as an SAP implementation. I think for those of us who've had that experience, but yet still it impacts work, what work needs to be done, what's done by technology, what's done by people, how does that work change, where that work gets done, who does that work, you know, how do we manage the work in the pipeline? what's the compliance, like reporting for OSHA. So all these things then, if you have a systematic kind of way of going about it, allows you to take the technology and filter it through here. And that's in essence, Patrick, what you did and what you just described is what we do even with the most complicated technology. In fact, when we start doing an operating model redesign, I'm going to go back a slide just a second here, a couple of slides. Our process, how we go about a redesign, is on the left-hand side of the screen. When we do the current state review, which is baselining the initial operating model, which is what I recommend when you're putting technology in to begin with, do a baseline of the current operating model and say, how's it done today? And get really clear about that, its strengths and weaknesses. One of the things we do is where do we collect something called an inventory of improvement projects? What are all the technology projects that we have going on right now, and which parts of the STAR are they going to impact? We do that early on because we want to know all the moving parts, not just about one part. So I think, Lisa, you used the word systemic. Think of it as a gestalt, that as internal change agents, as a coach, as an external vendor or supplier, you want to help them see the whole, not just the part. And I don't know if I need to explain why that's important, but hopefully with you guys, given your backgrounds, you get that. Any other reflections about when you think of a technology project, or if you had an example following Patrick's lead, thinking about impacts, or any questions?
So Mark, my comment is going to be not so much about a specific project, but maybe just how technology is evolving and how it will just kind of change and impact some of these things, even without like a specific intent to do so. So what I'm thinking of is, for example, like machine learning, artificial intelligence,
right?
Even like, you know, this idea that we can work remotely in mass, right, at scale. Technology that's on the horizon, like holograms and virtual reality and things that are kind of creeping their way into work, and how those will just potentially fundamentally upset or change existing systems. So they're going to have to just evolve. And I think the question that's in my mind listening to you is there intent behind the change, right? Are we just implementing a tool because it's a fun new tool? And are we thinking about all of the implication and impacts that it has in our processes?
Well, I think this is, so Sean, you've asked like a boatload of questions there. Let me try to pick one or two or three of them out, but let me highlight is, I can't consume or read enough about technology, how it's changing. So I'm the wrong guy to ask about that. It's probably, we probably need to go over to the university and find out what's going on, or maybe somebody can answer that. But I will share with you that I can't keep up with it. But I will share with you, you raised some really good questions that I'll share with you a couple of insights on our part. And maybe you'll find them insightful. Maybe you won't. The first is that all technology has some kind of impact on the STAR model. If you can get really good at translating the impact of the technology on the STAR model in very practical terms, you'll get way ahead of the curve. And I'm gonna give you an example here. I'm gonna fast forward, Sean, and I'm gonna show you how we do this. But what it requires is the technology people become more transparent in what the technology is going to do, and they talk it through. So let me share with you. So keep the STAR model in mind, and I'm going to fast forward here on some slides. So sorry to make you dizzy for just a second. You'll see here the STAR model. Let me go to this one. I think our color coding is off here, and it should be green. The value stream should be green. But one of the things that we do, Sean, and I think as development professionals, is getting really good at mapping the impact of the technology on the operating model in very practical terms. And so what you see here is a project we did 5-7 years ago. So it's maybe more than that now. But it was basically around omni-channel. If anyone's ever heard of omni-channel, which is having one channel for your customers, no matter what, one way of tracking your customers, no matter what channel they come in on, whether it's digital or web, or whether it's in a store, or whether they call, but you can track them everywhere. It's called omni-channel. And this company, this fast-moving consumer goods company, was putting omni-channel in. And what we did, the first thing we did was map the impact of that technology on the STAR model in very practical terms. You can do that with any kind of a technology. Let me go back, Sean, to one example that, as you were speaking, reminded me of. If you keep in mind IT professionals, internal IT teams and finance teams, one of the things that's happening in finance is the world of finance, as it matures in an organization, is not really interested in accounting and someone reconciling the accounts, because you can automate all that stuff. What's now incumbent upon finance professionals of tomorrow is being able to do business modeling and a deeper level analysis and trending analysis across lots of data points, almost like technology. And what we've seen as we've redesigned internal finance functions for large companies, is their finance professionals are actually looking more and more like IT professionals. And so what we're seeing are those two, what were seemingly different professions now merging, because the finance professionals of tomorrow are doing things like business modeling, working with AI, looking at trends, providing better decision support, and it's actually stepping on IT's toes. So it's really kind of it's a real practical example of what you said of what is the impact of you put more and more technology in, and as it modernizes an organization, what impact does it have on different jobs?
Yeah, I'm sure this is happening in the world of football in Europe, just as it's happening in the world of football here in the US, where professional teams are gathering all kinds of data about their players, right? Because they have sensors now in their shoes or in the ball, or in hockey, they're using it in the puck, right? And so they're—
Well, you see, in the world of world football, so soccer, you'll see that they have men and women have vests on, which watches their heart rate, how far they're running, all the things that they're doing from both individual. But you're absolutely right. It's almost like Moneyball, the movie with Matt Damon. It's like on steroids. But it was really, it's right. And it's going to continue to do that. Companies are going to continue to leverage data and information. I'm going to keep us going. Hopefully this is starting to give you some sense of what you can do. I'm going to go back here because I'm going to show you a couple of things. When we approach an operating model redesign, this is how we approach it, from a business direction to the work, to how do we organize the work, to starting to look at the management mechanisms. There's a lot of detail here, but if you just stay high level, I'm going to take you one more slide in. You'll notice everything is around the STAR model. If you look at the grayed out area, well, if you look at this slide, we do concept and detailed design work, where again, we're building on the work and how that work spits out a set of metrics. But if you look for us, roles are not the same as jobs. So one of the hints I want to share with you, Patrick, in your job, how many roles do you think how many hats do you wear in your job today, do you think?
I'll make it really simple. I'll just say two, but within that, there's a lot of subcategories. Just as an HR manager, as most of you probably can imagine, there are quite a few items, but that in the OD guy and the HR manager, that starts to really branch out into a lot from there. So
right. So you have at least two main hats, what we call two main roles.
Yep.
One of the things that's really important for you to understand is a role is not a job.
Mhm.
A job is made up of many roles. Some jobs can be a singular role where you want deep expertise. Some jobs can have multiple roles where they're more, if you think about more on the generalist. When we start to design roles and jobs, it comes right from the work. If you map the impact of technology on work, then you take that work and you say, is this going to be in a person, into a role or a job, or is this going to be done by technology? When it's done by the technology, we consider it a role, but it's being done by a machine versus a role that goes into a job being done by a person. So we will document the impact of technology on real work in decision-making and governance and value stream work. And we will consider the technology a role and we'll give it a name. So that we're basically seeing the technology just like we see another human being. It's a role that needs to be played, but in this instance, it's being done by a machine versus being done by Betty. And it really helps us to integrate and then build the right jobs and put together the right teams and units in order to leverage and maximize the technology itself.
If you remember, Mark,
go ahead, Dave.
Just jump in. Remember, Mark explained about why it's so important to follow the sequence he explained on the STAR model. That when you're trying to identify which role technology will fill, that role needs to be one that's linked back to something that is done as part of your value creating work. So if you try and inject technology too early without really understanding that value stream, you can guarantee it's going to be misplaced. Unless you're very, very lucky, it's not going to be in the right place to deliver the true value to you as a company. So lots of people will hit on technology and they'll turn around exactly as you said, Sean, and say we need to incorporate some machine learning in this particular aspect of how we work. Or I want better data analytics. I want to be able to dashboard everything. I want to see trends and so on, which is great. You're providing people with invaluable information. But unless that information is turned into insights that allows them to make decisions and then change how they work or change the way change the way the work is executed in the short term, then you're not delivering something that contributes to the value stream. So you've got to go back to the beginning. So if anyone says we need to use technology, say, okay, well, what role is it going to fill and where does that role sit in the value stream? Because then you can make sure that all of the other aspects of the STAR model are attended to, so that when you do introduce it, you introduce something that is used and that's accepted, that's supported, and that adds true value to your company.
There's a lot to take in here. So let's give you a chance to kind of ask some questions or maybe share some reflections. Or maybe we lost you and you just want to say, I'm lost, which is totally fine too.
I would like to just comment something. If I reflect the situation when the information system developers, they are going to organization and they make the sale. from my experience, it's usually about like fixing the current state. So what could be like recommendations for these IT developers, for this organization, that they could kind of think about the holistic organization design to really do the work for the future, not for the current state?
Yeah, Vera, first of all, applaud the question because it's very insightful. It really goes back to, I'm going to bounce back here. Sorry, guys. I'm going to bounce back to the model here, to our cycle. We always start with a current state review, which asks the question, how fit for purpose is our current operating model? So before we bring technology, our guidance to customers is before you bring technology in and sign on the dotted line and purchase, your first big decision is, are you going to put it on top of bad work? If your operating model is unfit today, then what's the point? Why would you do that? So the first thing we do is model the current operating model and ask the question, what needs to be fixed? What needs to be redesigned? What can we build on that's actually working quite well? That then determines, do we go to redesign? So for example, do we redesign the value creation process? Or do we just buy technology and put it on top of what's already existing? It's a huge mistake to just, I think, to put it just on top of something that's already existing, thinking it's going to make everything better.
Maybe one more question. Another situation that I have from my experience, when I have these big clients like bank or some bigger companies, there is another question about the architecture, because they have probably more than 1,000 small, big applications and systems. And it's another question how they can like adapt easily to add, but also to reduce. So how this like system to adding new stuff, because the technology is so fast, but also to let go stuff that is not working, but from the current situation, usually it's adding, but not reducing. So what do you suggest for this situation?
One of the things that happens with people, Jonathan, this is in your area of expertise. If you look at all the neuroscience, we love patterns and we love doing things the same way. In the redesign process is you have to ensure that your process not only puts in new technology, but actually then old behaviors are stopped and old ways of working are stopped. Now, how you stop those is a subject of debate. As organization development professionals, we believe that if you give people the right information and they're part of the process, they will go on the journey as long as they're part of it. If you take a push or what we call a compliance route, where we're going to tell people what to do and you're going to get on with it, then what we found is it's going to take more effort to comply, to cajole, to basically move people to a place of conforming to what it is that you need them to do. Regardless, in either of those approaches, what has to be thought through is a very clear statement about ways of working and how we're going to go about the change so that we extinguish, if I could use a term from learning theory, if we could extinguish workarounds and old behaviors. Vera, one of the things that we find fairly regularly or consistently in our operating model redesigns is a savings of 10 to 25% capacity release, which means stopping old work, stopping all unnecessary reports, stopping old unnecessary ways of working and replacing them with a new way. And of course, it just is logical that if you take 10 different sub companies in a company and they're doing it 10 different ways, that creates a lot of waste. And if you give them one way to do it, no matter where it's done, it should have by itself synergies. But what happens is it's magical thinking to think you could just drop a tool in and people will automatically conform. It's just not how we work. And so the wisdom we use is patterns die hard. And until, Jonathan, I was trained as a systems psychologist, until you interrupt those patterns and change the patterns of behavior that are no longer needed and replace them with new patterns, then what you get is kind of a half old, half new workarounds, still doing things 2 years later like you've always done them. And I think it's just poor change work. Does that answer your question, Vera?
No, just thank you, because this is that I feel from org design. Still, it's about changing behavior and thinking about how we can approach the work.
I cannot, I'll give you a data set here. What we find is that, and I think you've seen this before, Vera, since we've worked together before. What we find is that when you engage people in their own change process, it takes more time up front, but you save about 25% more in terms of effort at the back end and speed in terms of implementing a new change. So so we call it pull versus push. So when you create pull, which is people support what they help create, they're part of the process. And you do some beta testing with the people and let them pull the solution into the workplace, it gets implemented much faster and much more smoothly. And you avoid all those downstream problems that people go, well, I didn't agree to that. I didn't agree to that. What you get when you use a push or compliance-based approach, which is faster up front, but in the long run, it costs more and it takes more effort. So it's really a pay now, pay later equation, which I think illustrates your question, Vera. Let me go back one thing. First of all, is this useful, guys? And tell us where you want to go if it's not, or any other questions that you have.
Very useful for me. Thank you.
Okay. Betty, anything you want to add? Okay. Randy, you good? You good?
It was all very helpful.
Go ahead, Vera.
Okay, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
go ahead.
My question is what about the process? Which kind of process do you follow? Because I mean, if I'm in a similar case in a company, the owner said, I want to make IT changes and technology changes, but my fear is at the end I have spent a lot of money, but I have much more effort and at the end it's not suitable, it's not good. And I'm thinking this is a good way to proceed, but it's just about workshop activities or something else.
It can be done in a workshop, Vera. It could be done in natural work teams. So you can do it in a number of ways. You could do it on site or you could do it virtually. So there's lots of ways that you can go about this. But yes, it can't be done as an expert where you're doing all the work for everyone. So for example, what you shouldn't do is interview Randy and then interview Lisa, interview Jonathan and Betty, and then write it up and say, here's what I found. You should avoid that at all costs. What we do is try to take people in their natural work teams and have them do this work together, because what we're wanting is them not to be dependent on us as external consultants. We don't want to move in there. And of course, if you're internal, that's also, it can be very helpful because you'll have access to things that as an external we won't have. But I'm going to go back to first principles, which is the first thing that you should do is model as best you can the current operating model, and then look at the technology and say, if we bring this technology in, what will it do for us? And you should document it around the STAR model so that you can say, what will it do for us in regards to, for example, how will it change our business direction? Will it change our offerings to our customers? Will it change our competitive difference? Will it change our strategy? Next set of questions. Will it change the value creating work done today? Will it change the work? Will it change who does the work, the jobs that do the work, who has access? Now, remember this, anytime you go to technology, now you need access rights. So if Lisa today has a spreadsheet on her desk and she uses that and she collects data, and then tomorrow it's in the cloud in the technology, when you start to go to implement, she needs now access to that information so that she can continue in her job. So there's lots of things to think through. And what we do, and what I'd recommend, Vera, is you understand the technology well enough to document what's the impact on the operating model and working your way around the STAR model before any purchase, before the purchase is made, so that leaders can understand if we're going to spend 2 million, 5 million, 100 million, 150 million, this is what it's going to take to really put it into place, and that they're not just somebody, sometimes leaders read an article on an airplane ride and they think, oh, we got to get this. We got to be agile. We're going to go to agile teams. I read this article. Let's do it. You want to kind of inject a bit of reality to help them understand what they're up against and what it's going to take. So there's not magical thinking. So that's where I'd recommend you begin. Real quickly, I have a really fun story from American Express here in the Valley. This is a case study a while back, but you're going to laugh at this. But basically, American Express on the corporate card side was partnering with Siebel to put in a CRM that would connect all the salespeople on the corporate side around the globe. American Express up till that time did not have a really good track record with implementing technology projects. And of course, Siebel came in as the experts, right? We're gonna understand the process. We're gonna then set up the CRM so it works for everyone. We'll train everyone. We'll do some change management and off we go. Well, this leader who still works for American Express, Lauren Brown, and I were colleagues and friends and still are. And he said, there's got to be a better way to do this. So I said, there is. So what we did was we brought Siebel into the room with the people who would be affected, with a design team who would be affected. And we had Siebel map, and all we did was map of how the CRM would impact the value creating work. And we had them act as experts, as just telling us what that work, what that technology would do. We didn't want them to make any suggestions about roles or jobs or anything like that. Just tell us what the impact of the technology will be. And it's both on work and decisions. So whenever you try to unearth the value creating work, always couple it with decisions, what work and decisions are being impacted. Anyway, we ended up mapping that out with the design team in the room, the people who were going to be doing this work. And they ended up designing how they wanted it to work, and then gave that to the Siebel team to make it work after they understood it all. And what the magical thing that started to happen was the design team, the natural work team that was aware of this, started talking about it with their colleagues, and they were excited about it. And they worked with Siebel to tweak it and to make it work, and they would test it. And then finally it worked. And Siebel hardly had to do anything to implement it other than turn it on, because the teams were already excited about it. They had change champions, people pulled it into the work, and the behaviors just naturally changed. And the magic there was they were involved. They didn't have people telling them what it was going to do. they actually made it work for themselves, and the role of the technology company entirely changed. They had to play a different role, which they were initially very uncomfortable about, because it was very different for them. But it's a really classic example. That, by the way, that case study is about 15 years old, and it's still one of the fastest implementations they ever had for a technology, and painless. And so it's just, I think it just illustrates the point here about changing the, of really being insightful about what is the impact of technology on work and decisions. This is the Dave Casey's point here that he mentioned. Other questions, comments, reflections?
I have a
Vera, go ahead.
question. Okay.
Yeah.
My question is that after listening you speaking about American Express, the question is, you put all the people in the room, and maybe they reflect on the deeper impact of technology on the side of the SAR, no?
Right,
But
exactly.
it's difficult because people, I imagine, a technological company, IT company, and maybe every people is deeper inside some technology, so they has to change the overall, and maybe they didn't know which is the best technology. So there is a lack of knowledge in technology, and also a lack of knowledge in organization. What does it means value stream? The first part is up to us, organization designer, but the second part, how to fill the gap.
Well, so Vera, this is where I think your role as an organization designer becomes one of coach and trusted advisor. So this is where our work becomes a little bit more difficult, because now you're influencing people and you're influencing leaders, and you have to help them understand the decisions they're about to make. And as an external, we always say, we're going to give you the information so that you can make better decisions. And then once it's your decision, it's not ours. So I think part of your role has to be coach, trusted advisor, and helping them understand what's the impact of the decision that they could potentially make, so that they can make a more insightful decision.
Okay. So maybe that's they have to choose between different technologies, and maybe they don't know which are the best one.
Right, right. So for example, we see this a lot in organizations. Let's use Sean as example. Let's pretend Sean's a leader. He might know somebody at his last job that did this with that. And so he goes, I'm going to go to them because I trust my colleague who was there, and I'm going to find out more about it. I think when it comes to making large purchases like that, I think it's important to do like anything else. Like when you're going to buy a car, you're going to buy a house, do some due diligence to say what's right for us. What's the right solution for us? And unfortunately, for better, for worse, sometimes leaders get a little bit headstrong, and they know one thing, and that's what they know, and they're going to lift and shift from their last job and say, we're going to do this here. Randy, you're shaking your head. You've probably seen that in your career quite a bit. Anyway, that's just something to reflect on.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Randy, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, no, your comment, Mark, is so spot on, and even across industries. And you mentioned earlier about employees, that pull versus push and the resistance you get if you're just, but I think I see that most pronounced when it's not really clear to the workforce, the purpose, the reason why. And I think you have to be really clear on why are we doing this, and that has to be a part of that whole conversation. Because when people understand the purpose, and then everything you presented as far as how it impacts the various elements of the organization, but I think that conversation has to start with just the why, the purpose, and when people understand that, they're much more willing to then have that rest of that conversation.
This is the change model we use. It's by Ackerman, and I love it. It's called the depth. We call it the depth of change model. But it's how do you take people through contact and awareness of change, change is coming, to understanding the change, the positive perception, and how do you then get them to what we call readiness. So it's a big thing in our world. And this is something you don't think of after, you think all the way through the process. One of the very important elements of this model is I can tell you up front something's going to happen, and I can show you slide decks to build your awareness of the change, but I can't tell you or PowerPoint you into death into understanding the change or getting to a positive perception. So part of our work as organization development professionals is how do we engage people in meaningful ways to help them come to their own understanding of the change and getting to their own positive perception of the change before implementation. So in our world, readiness has to happen at the same time as implementation begins. Otherwise, you end up pushing. So in essence, when we're doing change work, whether it's technology change or whether it's an operating model modernization, is we are working this change model behind the scenes to build readiness for all the affected stakeholders in real time. So you have almost two tracks of change, which is the technical change, the technology, the operating model change, and then you have all the people change. And you got to have your eyes on both those things simultaneously. We're not a big believer in the change curve and the dip in productivity. We don't see it when we go through this model. And while I recognize grief and loss, and I have totally believe in everything that comes with that work, I don't think, I think that the whole change curve, the traditional change curve where the dip in productivity is a result of push and not of pull. It's compliance-based change. Let me stop there. Any other reflections? Any other thoughts? You know, so I guess for me, the bottom line for everyone is always start with understanding the current operating model or what the impact of the technology or what the current, wherever you're going to drop in the technology, how does it currently work today? And then understand the requirements and the impact on real work that technology is going to bring. If you can get those two pieces of information, you can then start to model it over the STAR model and say, okay, if this is the impact, we better be thoughtful. And Vera, this is to you, Vera in Italy. We better be thoughtful about what kind of change work this is going to require, because it's not going to be something as simple as we're going to drop this in and magically people are just going to conform with this behavior.
I think, Mark, one thing that keeps coming back to me is Sean's comment, and maybe this is a topic for a future discussion, because all of this makes sense. I also think it is becoming already more difficult and will become more difficult to have these sort of thoughtful dialogues when you're facing multiple technologies being introduced at the same time across multiple departments and units and even individuals within each team.
Right.
And I just, that increasing complexity, I think it will be interesting to see, but I would love to be part of that discussion as far as how do you harness all of that and have these sort of thoughtful discussions when you're facing multiple, technology innovations and changes simultaneously.
The fastest redesign we've ever done for an enterprise is 8 weeks. We did a redesign of Fitbit back in 17, 18 in 8 weeks. And if you go back to Fitbit in 2017, they were getting killed by the Apple Watch. And Apple and their share point went from about 40 something a share to down to less than $5 a share. They were under tremendous pressure to do something. Must have had at least 15 different technology projects going when we did the redesign. And Randy, we had a war room. We basically had a vacant floor in a skyscraper in San Francisco, and we had 50 people coming in and out, spending 4 hours a day from across the business. And we mapped those technologies. We brought the technology professionals in. We asked them to describe what the impact of the technology is. So we had all these moving parts, but we had it all in one place. And these 50 people got to see the gestalt of it all. And we're able to make really, really good decisions about how do we set up our operating model based on all those moving parts. So it's my way of saying to you, it can be done. We've done it. We'll do it again. In fact, we just launched a project last week that is going to have that same element. It's just a bigger thing, but you still have to see how all those parts and pieces fit together. And it gets more complicated and complex, but it's doable. One of the things I would say to you. So I agree with you. Things move faster, lots of changes going on, but it's certainly doable.
Yeah, I almost think it's more important, with increased complexity and numerous technologies, this becomes more important. I don't know if the technology folks and executives and boards and managers understand that.
I think this is a new role for organization development professionals that you guys should be getting involved in like crazy. So, it goes beyond, leadership development. It goes beyond change management. Change management in our books is kind of outdated and old and behind the times. So I think this is a brand new role for an opportunity for organization development professionals and design professionals. So, Sean, hey, everyone, it's been, for Dave and I, it's been a real pleasure to be here with you on this afternoon, this evening. We know it's different times. Vera, thank you for eating your dinner. While I'm sorry to interrupt your dinner, but it's great to have both Veras from across the pond, deep in Europe. Sean, we're going to turn it back to you.
Mark and David, thank you so much. This was great. There's a lot to process here and a lot to think about.
Yeah.
And I think it's really timely. I think you're spot on, Mark, about kind of the future of OD. I mean, I didn't talk a lot about what I'm doing at work, but I can see that there's some relevance here in terms of where do we go and things that need to happen inside organizations as they implement new technology and think about, because I just shortly, I don't think the choice is not to implement technology. The question is what do you do with it when you get it, and how will you change your operating model? I think what you presented here, Mark and David, is it's very insightful. So I want to thank you. I do want to thank especially those who have joined us for the first time. I hope you'll come back and you'll find more interesting topics to participate in. And to the Veras who joined us from across the pond, thanks so much. It's good to have you. I'm glad you guys could make it. We hope you'll join us on some future webinars like this. And Mark, before we go, I want you to know you were volunteered by someone in your, I think it was Marie, for another presentation in August. I don't know if you intend to do that.
I'd love to. You know what? Arizona ODN is close to my heart. So Sean, I'd be delighted to do that. So no worries. And don't forget to remind people you're going to make the recording available, and we'll make some of these slides available, everyone, so that you'll have that.
Yep. Once I get the slides from Mark, I will send out the recording and the slides to everybody that was on the presentation today. So thank you, everybody.
That's great.
Have a great rest of your day.
Sleep well. Have a good afternoon.